everyone, and welcome. I'm Malisa Carullo, your host this evening, and I'm going to be joined tonight by Ashley Koff, a 25-plus year award-winning registered dietitian. She has developed and provides truly personalized solutions for her patients, practitioners, and organizations. Ashley helms a team at the Better Nutrition Program. This is a company she founded in 2019. She is the nutrition director for UCI Susan Samueli Integrative and Functional Medicine Fellowship and is a fractional chief nutrition officer for entities like VitaBoom. Tonight we're chatting about strategies to revitalize your gut and just how lifestyle nutrition and supplementation can all play a role. I definitely think this is going to be a topic that we'll have a lot of you chatting, dropping questions in our chat, which is great for Ashley. We definitely welcome all those questions. Let's just see. And great. I got a little worried there for a second.
Yeah,
Welcome.
me too.
Welcome, Ashley. I just gave a brief intro about yourself, but before we get deep into conversation, because I think that we're going to have a lot of good conversation, especially with our joiners in the chat. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and what you do?
Yeah, thank you. Well, professionally, I started off actually working in the world of advertising, and I sold sugared cereals. So I apologize already for being very successful at that and sort of how that netted out. But my own health issues that I always thought of as being a chubby kid that then was an uncomfortably belly fat girl and young woman, that I was just a bad dieter. And I ultimately learned that it was my digestion and how hormone shift were affecting my digestion and, so many of these pieces. So this is a passion project. I think learning to, you don't solve them, learning to understand how your body works, what it needs to run better, how important it is to check in on your digestion, how foundational it is, really changed my life. And that pivoted me to want to share that message with others at every life stage. So that's been wonderful. And I always love to acknowledge Metagenics because very early on, as a dietitian, I actually didn't have the opportunity to learn a lot of the stuff that we take for granted learning, today. And so Metagenics and Jeff Bland were like my teachers early on. So very grateful on that part. But thanks for having me, Melissa. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to echo that as well with Dr. Bland and Metagenics in general. Just pioneers. We always have been, and we're going to continue to do that. As you know, we always do with our research and our supplementation. You already kind of noted, your story and how you've gotten into it, and a little bit why gut health matters. But can you just expand on that? Why it matters to overall health for individuals?
Sure. Literally you can't have any health goal. So if our biggest health goal is to have optimal health span, so living whatever length of life that you choose or would want to live, living it as healthy as possible and kind of just having a drop off at the end, that is the goal. And you can't actually have that if your digestion isn't working better. Our digestion is the foundation for which nutrients come into the body primarily. I'll mention that in a second, but come into the body. And then the digestive system does, I like to think of it like a whole factory. It does this assessment process. Like, is this good? Can I use it? Where should I send it? What should I do with it? Did it come in like a big box with all these little boxes in it? So I have to break it down, is it in breaking it down? Do I need it to convert it into something that like my team will be able to use easier, et cetera? And then of course, we obviously want to make sure we are eliminating, but the ability to eliminate toxins means that, like in something like weight loss, which I'm seeing on here, if we're shrinking our fat cells, we're having toxins come out and we need to make sure that they get eliminated. So that elimination process working successfully is also just such an important part of, again, everything that we do. And I think the absorption part of digestion is often not given as much attention as I would like it to, because the ability for, I think a lot of times we've just thought of our digestive tract as a tube, and it really has a very metabolically active lining around it that is doing a lot of work for, things like immune health and also for metabolic health. So I could go on and on. I'm not going to because we got questions to answer. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna go back to that though, because I am really big on that, like just going back to foundation and making sure absorption is working and whatnot. But I before I like just ask you different directions I'm gonna go, but how would, because you have your hands in a lot of things, right? Like I'm reading your bio and you have your hands in a lot. You're a busy girl. How would like a client come to begin with? Like, would they be looking for GI support? Would it be mostly weight loss just to improve health overall?
Yeah.
I'm just interested in your like your process and then how you would, break it down for that client.
Yeah. And it's funny because I was very early on in working in the digestive space. I sort of developed it as a specialty. I wrote my first book on it. I helped, different like the bifidobacteria become popular, things like that. And but I never wanted to be called a digestive specialist. I thought that that was like kind of, would mean that people wouldn't come to me for all these other things. So it's really interesting. I would say us ladies of all ages tend
Mhm.
to be more focused on our belly area, and that's because of our menstrual cycle. It's because of society, like we don't want to have our bellies hanging out. It's because when things change, like I'm in perimenopause right now, your bellies start to hang out, just all of that. The number of men who have come to me for digestive things, it has increased over the years. And part of that is we're seeing more autoimmune disease in men and disruption. And I think we're starting to message to men where they're hearing a little bit more about this, but
Yeah.
they typically weren't coming to me for digestion. And then I would ask questions. And it's also kind of funny too, because I did a lot of work with couples. I did this reality TV show, Shedding for the Wedding. And, I'd
Oh,
ask the couples together, and they could be same sex couples. They could be, man and woman, but I would ask them about their part. I'd ask the individual about their digestion and they'd be like, yeah, it's fine, whatever, especially if it was a guy. And the other one would be like, are you kidding
right.
me? Like you have the worst gas, And so it's like, so I actually have had to teach men, and even starting with little boys, the gas and, pooping, like straining to poop or pellets or, things like that, that's actually a sign that your body isn't working better. So I would say more often than not, men come to me for cholesterol, for weight, for, I would say those are probably the two, or maybe in today's world also concern about heart health, or, maybe they have a genetic test and they're like, oh, I've got ApoE, 3.4 or 4.4. And they're coming on that side. And then I worked with a lot of performers and athletes because I was in,
Nice.
Los Angeles. So they would come to me for performance related things. And then we'd start to talk about the gut. I'm like, we got to start here, So mostly women often come in about the gut. And then I'm like, or actually you come to me for weight and I'm like, hey, let's talk about your gut because we're not going to get where we need to go without that. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. What about other lifestyle factors? Like, would you work on that, or do you pull other individuals in to help
Yeah.
you, or how would that
Yeah,
work?
so I think part of the job in healthcare is to have a team that can connect with people in different ways. So I live for my health coaches. So I'm not a trained health coach. I think a lot of dietitians are very smartly today becoming coaches. I part of that is that I was sort of grew up and was like, all right, I'm going to help you figure out what's wrong with you, and I'm going to make recommendations. And then it's kind of like it stops, and it's like, all right, so now we need. I think I've always been oriented because I'm very competitive. And so I like to win. And so
Okay.
if something wasn't working for someone, I'm like, wait, what about that? Or what about that? And so we try that. But a coach's job is to help you figure out SMART goals and then work towards those, so being specific and measurable and, looking at results, et cetera. And so, what I would say in that space is definitely, I think every one of us should be talking about lifestyle. I was just with my colleague, Dr. Lodog. She's one of the leading
Yeah,
female
absolutely.
physicians, just
Hmm.
total guru, right? And she's, she walks into a room and she said, you know what, I'm just curious. And she tells this story about a woman who was there to see her, and they had a couple of conversations. Turns out the woman was grieving the loss of, a family member. And she was like, I think we need to spend this session crying. It's that kind of thing. So I don't not bring up lifestyle, and I want people to understand that nutrition can't override lifestyle, and lifestyle can support nutrition, but it can't do what you want it to do. Like, can't just exercise and not pay attention to your nutrition or your digestion. So I bring it up, but and we'll look at wearables and and all of those different things to see how somebody's sleep is, and those parts. There may be somebody who's a better expert than me, and then I collaborate with them on that part.
So, are there certain lifestyle factors you see common in quite a few of your clients, and would those be?
Well, the biggest one is, ladies and gentlemen, none of you are a complete hot mess. You are coming to me feeling like everything that you're doing is wrong, or you always tell me what you know you should be doing, but what is wrong. And by the way, if we're doing something, if I am smoking cigarettes, and we know that there's evidence that smoking cigarettes can increase risk of, of health issues or whatever. Okay, so maybe that's not my better choice, but maybe, you used to be a pack a day and now you're one cigarette a day. Like, how do we frame that? And so I think that, one of the things that I've observed in sort of the lifestyle space is people being very like, I'm doing this wrong, or I'm a failure. And we've taught you to do that. That is what marketing and even unfortunately practitioners have taught you to do, and just be, because they've given you this idea of a right answer. So one of the things that I love, I'd love for you to take away today is there literally is no right answer. I don't even have a right answer working with you as a patient until we actually come up with an idea to try, you try it, and then you're like, wow, that worked. And by the way, I can keep doing it. So that's deliciously doable. I'll be able to keep doing it. Okay, so that kind of moves into the right zone. But 3 months later, if the right thing for you to do is to walk outside at night at 7 o'clock and now it's 14 below and it's dark, that's not a right answer. Like, that's not going to work. So I think that, we get really caught up in telling you what to do, and then you feeling like you're a failure. And so mindset, to me, I call it, my company's named the Better Nutrition Program, and we you have an expression that's BNP, so it's better, not perfect. Mm-hmm. And when we are in that perfect mindset, it's so easy to be wrong. But when you're in the better place, there's, there are better options. And we need to recognize that our mindset is a set of beliefs. They're not necessarily truths. So I would say the number one place that I'm often working is on mindset. And that was a long answer, but yes.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a good point, because I think we're also, like you said, we've trained ourselves, right? We're always surrounded in our personal space by guilt, right? Like that pair of pants that doesn't fit anymore, but we're not going to get rid of it because it might fit again someday, but we keep looking at it and we just feel worse and worse about ourselves. So you bring up a lot of good points there, and points that need to be taken care of, like in the treatment plan, right? So
yeah.
How do you evaluate patients? So I know it sounds like you work with a huge team over there, which is great. I love collaborative work. We all need a team supporting us. But do you run labs or order labs, or how would that
Really
work?
great question. And I love that I make it sound like I work with a huge team. I have an amazing team. We have 50 coaches across the country. We have a smaller clinician team, but we also work with you and your practitioners. So
Awesome.
we're just here trying to make sure, we can collaborate with you. But we're pretty nimble, we're pretty small, and lean, mean fighting machine. It really depends. So the other thing that I think is one of the biggest barriers to success today is budgeting. And I think people often aren't supported with budgeting. Mm-hmm. I'll say that, being like, I have my company is, I'm the sole investor. I've been in private practice, all this stuff. So I don't have anybody else to like be paying for this stuff. And when I go into the doctor and it's like, oh, I'm thinking this, so let's do these 4 tests and let's do these 25 supplements, and you should also do this for your skin, and it would be great if you did this. And I was like, so I'm gonna have to find another day job to like afford being healthy. So one of the issues that, and the flip side for me has been, I can literally work with you if I have no information other than just talking to you. So if I ask you 10 or 15 questions about your digestion and about how you smell and about how you feel and about what your history is, we can get a pretty good plan together to start seeing if things are going to be a little bit better on that part. Now, you have to be careful with your interventions, because you don't want to do something very tactical if you don't have specific information. Like, so I'm not going to put someone on an antibiotic. I wouldn't be doing that anyway, but I wouldn't do that without some good evidence, in that space. And I mean, I can't actually prescribe an antibiotic. I'm not against antibiotics on that part. So, when you use a stool test, when you do blood work, all of these things needs to be considered, and it needs to be considered in today's financial environment and also in your resources. Like, I don't know for how long my stool test has sat on my desk, because I'm just not in the mood at any point in the day to not have eaten avocado the day before and also to collect my poop. Like, it just, I'm not there, right? So it's like, okay. And that, like, a coach could be like, all right, SMART goal. Like, you don't get to go do X unless you do your poop test, but paying for it. And then also helping somebody understand that usually I'm not going to do just one test. I want to see in 6 months or in 3 months, what has happened. So are we in a place where if we test this, we can actually retest it, and look at that piece. So oftentimes I can interpret labs. Now, one of the issues that we have today is that some of the labs that maybe a traditional, or like what we'll call an allopathic practitioner, you go to see your primary care physician, and they may get something called like a CBC, or, you know, comprehensive panel, and it's not actually that comprehensive in certain areas. So sometimes I'll say to someone, while we have some data, I don't have all the data I need. But if I was looking at iron, which sometimes relates to, you know, from my gut health standpoint, it always relates, I might also add an iron evaluation around what are you eating, what supplements are you taking, you know, are you newly hitting it hard at the gym, what's your period like, and that's going to give me good information. And if I didn't happen to have an iron lab, I might also be able to make good recommendations coming out of that. So I think we just have to be realistic today that we're not going to have, and I can love data, but I also don't want to just overwhelm someone financially. Or another one that really is important with gut health is I don't want to go out and have somebody do, if you came to me and were like, Ashley, I'm bloated, I'm gassy, got a little bit acne, I feel like this perimenopause thing is like, my hair's falling out, like, you know, whatever. And then I just said to you, hey, I'd love for you to go do a food allergy intolerance test. Well, you just told me your gut is really irritated. The likelihood, and this happens all the time, people come back and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm allergic to everything that I've been eating. And I was like,
Of
no,
course.
you're not.
Yeah.
You just took a test, and it's like the one that they sell online that's like, oh, you found out it was almonds. I was like, no, she was eating almonds every day and her body's like, I'm not happy. That's all that test told me, right? So that's where I do my digestive tune-up, which I've been doing for 20 years, before I would have somebody do that test, so that we can just kind of level the playing field and get better results from your testing. So it depends is a great answer. Yeah.
You set me up perfectly just to make a plug. I always make a plug where I can.
Yeah.
But I like to bring back to, this was at least 5 years ago, Metagenics and Personalized Lifestyle Medicine Center. We did a study with quite a few individuals. And the purpose of the study was to show the importance of a physical exam. Chances are you're probably not doing the physical exam, but the point is that there's just so many symptoms that are going to arise before changes in labs are going to occur. So, you know, you mentioned essentially, you know, what a client might say to you as far as like bloating, gas, dandruff. You said a few other things there, but essentially those are keys, right?
My breath is changing, my body odor is changing. I love that. By the way, during COVID, like this was how I worked with and I had so many patients during COVID because people literally couldn't go see their practitioners. And we did everything this way. So we had, and I do have our digestive evaluation with those quizzes. If anyone wants it, it's free. There's nothing attached to it. You are more than welcome to get it in the link. But asking them, you're so like, I love that. Of course, Metagenics is doing it because you guys had, you know, had developed 5R, but it's like, let's ask the questions, people. Let's see what has changed for someone on that part.
Right. The importance of the nutritional physical exam, because you can get so much information from that. And it's just like going back to basics once again. So that's awesome. Okay. I have another question. I'm going to go down different directions here. Is there, you know, one diet that you like tend to, you know, move towards with certain clients? Use all diets, or do you seem to like go back to the same one? What do you think works the best? Can you talk about diets?
Sure. I use the exact diet for every single client. And that is the one that works best for them. And I have to figure it out. So there is no like people be like, Ashley, I'm keto. And I'm like, first of all, once they start talking to me, I'm like, you're kind of keto-ish. Like you're doing keto, but maybe, you know, whatever. I'm like, and what you really need, Stacy, is Stacy's keto. So I don't need you to not be keto any longer unless there's an actual problem with what is going on. But we need the Stacy in there, right? And we really need Stacy today. So years ago, when I was working in DC and I thought I could change America's nutrition based on, you know, going to DC and getting involved in it there, and that didn't work, by the way, spoiler alert. But I was sitting with a bunch of people and talking about I said, you know what? I actually think the issue is we want people to have better health. And so to have better health, you have to have better nutrition, and there's no definition. So I actually created the definition because they all yelled at me and said, we have this definition in the World Health Organization. And I was like, yeah, but there's nothing that's better. Like we want to know, you know, so better nutrition is giving your body today what it needs to run better while reducing or avoiding what can irritate, overwhelm, and disrupt it. Beautiful. So when you think about your body today, it's timely because I at 50 am not getting in, like, am not responding to things, but also I in the summer am not responding to things the way I was in the winter. So, you know, it's timely on that part. And then the reducing what can irritate, overwhelm, and disrupt it can also be like, you know, hey, a kale smoothie can be great for you, but if it's 40 ounces or if it's got 60 grams of protein, like that's just too much for your body at one time, right? So it doesn't even speak to, like, yes, it could speak to the quality. It could be like, oh, I don't want a supplement that has this ingredient in, or I shouldn't have this, you know, this other piece on there. But I also feel like it does a really nice job of just having you think about the 4 pillars of better nutrition, which are quantity, quality, nutrient balance, and frequency. Yeah.
Awesome. Supplements. I know everyone's just waiting to hear what we think about
Yes.
supplements today. So is there a few that you might start with? I know you're probably going to say it's very individualized. Maybe just talk about some of your go-to supplements that
Yeah.
you tend to
I'm going
offer.
to surprise you. There's something that's not individualized at all. So
Okay.
I think that part is great. I want to put in context. For me, supplements are used for 3 reasons. They're used if we identify a deficiency or an insufficiency, and we're trying to optimize those. So I call those a gap in your nutrition, something we need to address. They also can be used to prevent those. And then I have a third category that I call like therapeutic use. So we're really using them almost as a medication or concurrently with a medication, you know, for their impact. And that third area you really need to be working with a practitioner on. And so when I look at that, it really brings me back to your supplement. It's your total nutrition. So it's your food, your supplements, all of this is working together. So
Sure.
we want to make sure that we're not in conflict. A great example could be like if somebody takes a methylcobalamin or a methylfolate, but I go into their cupboards or I have them do folic acid finding and they have all this folic acid in their food choices. They're washing their floor with dirty shoes. So let's like, work this out. So one of the things I learned when I was studying is that, so I did my residency at County Hospital in Los Angeles and I worked in the burn unit. And when I was there, I learned about the power of glutamine. And they call it a conditionally essential amino acid. And I learned at that point in time that to save somebody's life and literally give them a fighting chance, we just had to have so much glutamine available because their skin was destroyed. And it was literally the glue that was going to glue them back inside and outside, right? And we knew that also would make a life-changing difference because inside and outside, when you glue the skin together, your immune system is working more optimally and your metabolic health is working more optimally. So when that is happening, I learned about glutamine and I was like, so let me just understand why it's called conditionally essential. Well, by definition, that means that the body can produce it, but in some conditions, we might need a little more of it. Living in 2024 is like being my patient in the burn unit. Like there are so many things that are potentially, and maybe that's over dramatic and I don't want somebody to ever think that I don't recognize what is going on in a burn unit. I just want to be clear there. But I am an alarmist about this. We have so many things that are negatively impacting the glue, the lining of our digestive tract that, whether it's what you eat, if that was irritating to you, if you find out you are gluten intolerant or you're celiac, whether it's you drinking alcohol, having taken, Tylenol, and using NSAIDs on a regular basis, steroids, and the non-steroidals. There are so many different things, wonderful things like great stress in life, using IVF, using hormone therapy. Like these things are challenging the gap junctions, the lining of that digestive tract. So I'm like these days, I'm a pretty big fan of glutamine. And yes, you can get it from food. However, I do find that from a gut health maintenance standpoint, that has become pretty foundational. And one of the reasons it's become foundational is when we go back to me healing my own gut, I learned first about probiotics, the good bacteria. And so first I thought, okay, lactobacillus, great, got those in. We have a lot of those at Metagenics. I was like, okay, I love that. Then we started adding bifidobacteria and we knew, okay, strain specificity, that matters. But what makes sure that those bacteria like have a good home? They don't have a leaky roof. And that's the glutamine, the lining of the digestive tract. So when I'm putting together a plan for people, if I like, whether it's a multivitamin or whether it's anything else, I'm often using glutamine to make sure that I can help people to absorb that. So if you feel like you're not absorbing optimally, and then there's another side of it, which is if you feel like you're not metabolically active, a lot of that metabolic activity is happening. Today we have people who are using, having things like semaglutide, tirzepatides, the Ozempics, those sorts of things. And so you're asking, is glutamine for leaky gut? Absolutely, but it's also a preventative for making sure that your gut lining is just working optimally. So you don't have to have the diagnosis of intestinal permeability to actually see the benefit of glutamine. So that brings us to amino acids. And I feel like that, you know, I would definitely target that. So I am a card carrying myself and member, and probably most of my family, you know, anyone who will listen to me on the family side, there's probably no one, but a lot of my patients who listen to me, and that is Glutagenics. And then when people won't take, or maybe it's not indicated, or maybe the powder form isn't better, we use glutamine in, you know, in other ways. But I just wrote a whole book for you on that one. Like that to me is like a missing ingredient. And you know, Tracy, I'm like, is glutamine good for everyone? I never say everyone. There's no better, there's no perfect, there's no everyone. It's a strong contender to make sure that you're meeting your needs and, you know, muscle building, metabolic health, like there's so many different things. So yes, you could evaluate it, or we could look at your diet. We could see if we're getting it in, or we could also look at adding it and seeing over the course of, you know, 2 months, 3 months, do we see a benefit? And then, you know, start to think about, you know, what role it's playing. And I use it a lot in the digestive evaluation as a result of that too. Yeah, it is an amino acid. Yes. Thanks for asking. Yeah.
Actually, you are a pro at Insta. You're so good at following the chat. This is amazing. I was responding as you were
Oh, yes.
speaking
Oh, sorry.
to one of our joiners, but you were already on it. This is amazing. So just keep doing what you're doing.
Okay, got it. Okay.
I'm going to plug Meta again here for quality.
Yes.
Obviously, as most of you know, I work for Metagenics, so I love Metagenics, but from a practitioner standpoint, in private practice, I have seen Glutagenics like just do wonders in such a short period of time. So again, just speaking to like the smallest scoop quantity that is just under 4 grams of glutamine to bring someone who's in like an ulcerative colitis flare, you know, back to health quickly. It's an amazing
And you
formula.
like you went like all the way out here, and like I use it for teenagers when they're first showing signs of breakout in skin, and I'm trying to keep them off of antibiotics and other topicals, you know, and other things from a skin standpoint. And so, you know, I think in that way, and so sometimes the quantity can be a factor if you're not seeing the result. The quality could be a factor. If you're not seeing the result, it might not be the only thing. So I just want to be clear. It's not like the answer to every test is glutamine, but some of the answers do include glutamine. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And any practitioners that are listening in to Ashley and I want to encourage you, if you want to speak about any supplements, just to call in and talk to our team, our clinical information team, because there's so much research and scientific clinical data that goes into formulating all of our formulas at Metagenics, that I think that there's so much information that most of you don't even know of how they're put together. For example, one of our medical foods, Ultra GI Replenish, again, like this is maybe not something everyone needs, but it's so well thought out with the glutamine in that formula that is combined. It's a dipeptide with alanine. So together they're basically polar opposites, but also synergistic. So alanine helps pull like water into the cell, helps with hydration, blood sugar. Like it's so well thought out that these are things that I wish everyone knew. So maybe I'll just have to start a channel just with that information, little meta supplement tips that people don't know. But yeah, you know, again,
you just led me right to the other place, and that is if you don't know if you're a sponge or a hose, you got to figure it out. So I'm talking about hydration. If you're drinking water and you're peeing it out, you're not absorbing nutrients. So in the same way, I'm obsessed with glutamine to really support absorption. And also, you guys remember that the lining of the digestive tract is where your L cells, so where your GLP-1, where your, you know, CCK, PYY, your metabolic switch, what I call the switch, the hormones are made and deployed. So there's so much activity there. But if you're not getting in, so that's interesting that you brought it up. Another place, remember I said I want to personalize supplements, but I have everyone do our hydration quiz or our hydration experiment. You drink 8 ounces of water, you're going to see how long it is until you have to pee. And the reason I do that is if you're a hose and you're not a sponge, you're not absorbing all the other stuff that you're trying to get in there. Like your B vitamins are not going where they're supposed to go, or, you know, like all of that. And I love that you brought up alanine as a part of that, because this is that package, that hydration package. So, you know, do I have goals for my skin? Do I have goals for my weight? Do I have goals for my sleep? Do I have goals for my cholesterol? They're all going to be related to this digestion, which I include hydration in there. So I love that you brought that up, because your magnesium, you guys have great magnesium, potassium, Sodium can be great. It can be
Absolutely.
useful. Sometimes we don't need to add it. Chloride, and then trace minerals. I think people sleep on trace minerals, and or maybe they get relegated to bone health and we forget about how important they are for, things like, gosh, forever I used metaglycemics. Like, I mean, just,
Me too.
different things like in terms of blood sugar, to get in those trace minerals, to be able to really bring those a lot, to help people get that benefit of hydration and metabolic
Yeah.
activity. Yeah.
And I think, again, the beauty of those formulas, all of the formulas you're naming, I also love, is that they're combo formulas, right?
Right.
So the body always wants to be in harmony, and it's always trying to balance out. So, typically majority of Metagenics formulas are going to be multi-ingredient, and that's just the reason why. If we keep flooding the body with one ingredient in particular in a certain dose, we're throwing off the ratios,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
yeah, the combos are beautiful. I echo
Yeah.
that. So
Totally.
okay, so we talked about glutamine. You touched on probiotics a little bit. What probiotics do you love from Metagenics?
Yeah.
I'm saying plural. I think there's more than one,
That's what
but
I was
maybe
just
there's not.
gonna say. I mean,
Okay.
Ultraflora, like from the day that Ultraflora was on the market, like it's like, okay, yes, check all the boxes. I would say I'm a little bit more like, I think there's foundational benefits for probiotics, your bifidobacteria, certain strains of bifido, certain strains of lactobacilli. But, research is evolving to show us that other strains may be more targeted, for vaginal health or for skin, or different things. So what I'll often look at, so let me say it this way. I'm not a believer that you can meet your good bacteria, your probiotic needs just by eating fermented foods. And a lot of fermented foods today, what's been done to them by the time they're in the grocery store, so unless you're making them yourselves, don't actually deliver what we would need to take in. So I find this to be a really important supplement area. But I'm more apt to personalize that one, than I would say others. And like as an example, Saccharomyces boulardii is really important for, I have a number of patients, I'm just so caught up. I see so many people right now on semi-glutide, tirzepatide, but when they're going up in doses, they're having looser stools. And so Saccharomyces boulardii has been really helpful on the flip side of a lot of people that are constipated. And then I'm like, okay, I don't want to use that. And so, but I really want to make sure you're getting in bifidobacteria. And bifidobacteria and Akkermansia and Clostridium, like those all can work together to support butyrate production, So I would say your good bacteria, the whole system, is one to consider and probably get personalized from somebody who knows your gut and you can talk to about, rather than just taking on that part.
Yeah, and I think we don't even have to like pretend to believe one way or another. Like it's definitely proven in the research now. You're just not getting what you need
Fair
from the
point. Fair
foods,
point. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like I think again, like it's definitely great to incorporate those foods in your diet, but yeah, we just need to supplement those things for sure. I think
Yeah.
that it's almost like going without saying now that most people are on
Yeah.
a probiotic, at least
Yeah.
foundationally. And then, like you said, if we need to be strain specific and be targeted or therapeutic, we could do that and add that in, no
And you know what
problem.
I'll also do, going back to the conversation of budgeting, is I will sometimes do a probiotic like once or twice a week and have them get a better quality, like, because your probiotics are expensive and the market, like in a good way, you know what you're getting, you're protecting them, like they're getting where they're supposed to go. And I have this conversation with people where they're like, can I just get, like, here's this on, Amazon or, et cetera, on that part. And in that way, I a lot of times will say, I'd rather you spend on this than spend on something that I don't know is working for you. There's also really bad information with some brands that are venture backed and have a ton of money and are just leading with marketing and not with science. And so like it's a lot. Like it gives my brain infobesity, so I don't know what it does, to everybody else. So that's also something to consider, unless we're doing a targeted intervention, that your maintenance plan may be that we don't have to take that every day. And it doesn't mean it's not foundational. It just means that we can be using that. Yeah, I do want to acknowledge the prebiotic conversation that's going on. We want to feed our probiotics, our good bacteria. We want them to have a hospitable environment. Many of them like an alkaline forming environment. So like we look at alkaline formers. Banana is really interesting. When it's a green banana, super starchy and tart and hard, it has more of the prebiotic. When it's at the grocery store, it's yellow or all the way to mushy, it's not going to be. Same thing with oats. When oats are raw and you have them as overnight oats as opposed to when you cook oats, so you can get some of that prebiotic fiber, in that way. And that can be a very helpful way to support the proliferation, if you will. And so, but I've seen things like green banana flour crisps. And I was like, yeah,
Interesting.
but they cooked them and they cooked them at a high temperature. And I was like, I don't think I have any active prebiotic, you know, so there are things that just aren't working and that are just really big on the marketing front. You know, my whole goal for starting a company as opposed to working as a practitioner was to create resources that mean you don't have to Google what's better from a prebiotic standpoint, you know, because I can't beat Google. Like I literally, you know, on that part, but I can give you those tools that you can read or, you know, evaluate yourself with and be able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually, we're going to definitely chat about this after too, because I want
Yeah.
to know what other supplements probiotic wise you're using
Yeah.
that are that much cheaper than Meta.
Oh,
Because when you break it
I'm
down by
not
serving
using
size,
I'm not
okay,
using the cheaper. Oh, I want to be
okay,
clear. What I'm saying is there are so many out there that
yeah,
are
there
much
are.
cheaper. And the issue that we have, and also recognize practitioners, you know, how they're selling them or whatever pricing might be slightly different. No, what I, you know, I want, I thank you. I'm so glad we're clearing that up. There are so many cheap options, and
Yes,
I'm not. And so what I'll say to people is, hey, instead invest in the
right.
better option,
Got
and then
it.
maybe a budgeting plan is that we just use it once or twice a week. Thank you so much for
Awesome.
clarifying that because I didn't want to be confusing.
You might
Yeah.
have you might have said that quite clearly. Maybe I just
No, you
interpreted it
probably it's
wrong.
budget.
But
You know, it's like whenever you hear finances, it's like, oh
we
yeah, how do we
just
do
want to
it?
reiterate that our probiotics are the best for sure.
Yeah.
And other than probiotics, we talked about glutamine, glutagenics in
Well, can
particular.
I
Any
talk about
other?
my favorite ingredient and I will tie it
Yeah,
to like my favorite of the moment ingredient. Look, I
of the
like
moment. Okay.
worship the ground. I'm such a fan of Kara Fitzgerald, Dr. Kara
Yep.
Fitzgerald,
Yep.
and she introduced me to Charles
SPMs.
Sirhan
Yeah,
uh,
I
and
knew it.
Charles
Yeah.
Sirhan, right? And so they introduced me to SPMs, the specialized pro-resolving mediators, lipid mediators, and it is changing the game. And especially when we talk about gut health and we look at
Yeah.
inflammation and that ability to turn it off. So I literally do have an entire podcast with her over, and you can just Google Kara Fitzgerald or we can drop a link in. But you know, to me, that's a game changer because I've seen people who are just trying to get more and more and more fish oil, and they're not seeing their results. Or somebody is on here talking about thyroid, you know, and autoimmune disease and others, and it's like this is that thing. And then as a very newly burgeoning, I would say, endurance athlete, I have firsthand been able to use that in lieu of a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, and like that's saving my gut, you know,
Yeah.
on that part. And so I think that's really, really important in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just had a conversation with Dr. Sirhan a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you saw it, but
I didn't.
he
Oh my
he
God,
put a
flag
lot
me.
of that information to rest. You
Okay.
know, just how amazing SPM Active is. That's the
Yes.
formula.
Yeah.
It, you know, does not replace
No.
omegas. In fact, like he talked about dosing and how you should, you know, dose them
Yeah.
together. Anyways, he's such an amazing, humble man.
Yeah.
SPMs are awesome. And then
And
you
Kara and
brought
I
up
we kind of duked it out in the podcast because I was like, look, I'm basically putting everybody on it and it's expensive. I want to be real clear.
worth every penny,
But
though.
that's what I was going to say. And if it helps me get you to where I need you to be sooner, if it gets you back to the gym sooner, if it reduces gut inflammation sooner, if it does any of those things. And I probably am less good at the do your fish oil and your SPM. And I sometimes will be like, then that. So that's a good reminder to me to make sure,
Definitely.
you know, I tend to focus a lot on where to get your omega-3s from food. And then I look at the, you know, the SPM on the other side. But that's a great reminder. Yeah.
Also, again, like not
Yeah.
everyone is doing omega quants, you know, checking
Yes.
omega-3 fatty acids.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you have a client, a patient that takes fish oil,
Yeah.
omega-3s, EPA and DHA, but they, on the omega quant, it shows
Yeah.
like it's quite high, but there's still like essentially symptoms of high inflammation.
Yeah.
That basically tells us that we do have that problem with
Exactly.
resolution, right?
That's
So
exactly.
there
Yeah.
is ways to like kind of see it on labs, but yeah, we just need both. And for those of you that are not familiar with SPMs, specialized pro-resolving mediators, they're downstream metabolites of EPA and DHA. And so we really hope our body can use the EPA and DHA that we take in and ingest and lipid class switch and move our bodies towards more of this homeostasis or resolution. But to Ashley's point that she mentioned over and over again, if, you know, on this Insta Live tonight, that individuals are just always bombarded, right, with inflammatory triggers. And so that's what we're seeing, is that we really need to support that second half of the inflammatory
And
cascade.
I think
So
that's, I honestly feel like it's a marker of where we are. My professional opinion is in 2024 and forward, and it's certainly been this way for, I'd say, the last 10 years, is that the mess that we're making inside of us, like even living healthfully and actually anecdotally even trying to live like even more intentionally, we're exercising harder, or we're going out into nature more, and we just happen to have a really, like, unfortunately, like just a lot of exposure, to toxins and things like that. And then healthy living is, building it up. So nurturing detoxification and supporting what I'm now calling both phases of inflammation is just, it's that next level. So I would say that part of, and I consider focusing on your digestion, tuning up your digestion, really part and parcel of making sure also that you're optimizing detoxification, because you're eliminating then, what the detoxification system has been able to do. But I'd probably have to put in a pitch for, a glucoraphan and a true broc, like as an ingredient anyway, like, because I come over to detox, like, again, with most of my patients, on that side too. Yeah.
Would you say I think you did say that you basically put or at least try to put every patient or client on SPM active, but would you say it's part of like most of your protocols then that you're doing?
Yeah,
Amazing.
and protocols are an interesting word for me. So two
Mm-hmm.
things. I work in oftentimes. So yes, people can come see me directly. They do that, at the Better Nutrition Program. They see me, they see my colleagues, and we can do something. But we really do try to collaborate with. And so then a number of the work that we do, whether it's at Next Health, we see their patients. So I'm talking to the doctor and saying, hey, what's going on here? So most of the time I'm like, here's what I would do. How do you feel about this? And I can be a little strong-willed, but so I don't necessarily line up a protocol, but I'll say, hey, if we're seeing these signals, and then I mentioned at the beginning, it's a very nice to have a genetic test, so I like to look at that because I can often see where somebody's might just have more inefficiencies in their genes, which means they may just feel like they're more on a struggle bus and they're not getting outcomes from certain things. And for me on that part, I want to make sure that somebody is able to have something work more efficiently. And that's where SPM active has just been like the game changer, on that. Yeah. So I'd say in the majority of my protocols, but a lot of times I'm not getting to implement just my protocols. I guess the caveat.
Yeah. So there's a question. I don't know if you want to take it or can you explain why patients need both omega and SPM and how to use them in conjunction?
Sure. So, it literally is a phase 1 and a phase 2 of handling our inflammatory response. So when you're getting in your omega-3s, they do all of these amazing things. They're going to, go to the lipid membrane, and they're like, if we think about them, like they're going to be really helpful for helping to avoid chronic inflammation, in that regard. What happens is when they've done their work, and they're also building blocks, I mean, they're doing all these important things, right? So then what has to happen though is when the battle is done and the battle has been won, there's a mess that's there. And if the warriors are still going to battle and driving that forward, and the war is already over, your system is going to, that might be where it's perceived as attacking itself, but it still has things going on like an autoimmune. And we need to make sure that those resolvins, so those pro-resolving mediators, come in and they say, hey guys, war's won, it's done. You guys get to go now. We're going to come in. We're going to do the cleanup work. We're going to settle things down. So a really great way of thinking about it from an analogy standpoint is also that we know that we have a stress response. So when we experience stress, calcium comes into the cells and, bursts in like this big, and it's like, oh, I'm going to contract a muscle, and then it's like, okay, I'm stressed. And now it's like, I'm done. And magnesium kicks it out. And magnesium is like, goodbye, because I want to relax my muscle, right? So we need to make sure that these two parts are happening collaboratively. And what's really interesting is when you would eat fish, that's going to be in there. When you see in the animal, and that's actually how Dr. Sarhan first identified this, from a research standpoint, was looking at the animals and seeing, that, hey, in their fat, like this is already what's happening, on that part. So really, I think helpful in that way to think about them as complementary. So when you're eating fish, part of the issue is we have a lot of not clean fish these days, but when you're eating fish, that's going to be there. And it's also great to know that we've talked about omega-3s, but interestingly, your resolvins are also made from omega-6s, those important omegas that often we are like now supposed to be afraid of or told that they're not good for us, even though no food exists in nature is only an omega-3. There's always like some other set of omegas. And so you actually want to have these other fats coming in. And so that's the other part of it, where if you're trying to increase your omega-3 intake from a supplement standpoint, your resolvins will also help support what the work of those other fatty acids would be doing as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You made another good point. I remember before SPMs were like huge on the market, I attended a conference. It was a naturopathic doctor, and he actually worked with a lot of burn patients as well.
Oh,
And
interesting.
part of his, protocol that he lectured about was how like no one's incorporating omega-6s in there.
Yeah.
And so now it makes sense, like knowing the SPM
Yes. Yeah.
science and the biosynthesis, why that was a
Yeah.
thing.
Yes. And
Doctor,
I'm huge on the glamour fatty acid, GLA, our hair, skin, and nails, and of course, like dryness and hormones, and all of that. So yeah, we have to avoid this eating for, it would be like eating protein and thinking you're getting in glutamine. Like there are all these aminos on that part. There's a question that's been going around: your thyroid medication and your probiotics. So here, just as a rule of thumb, take your thyroid first on waking. Like you're just not supposed to take it with anything else. And your probiotics, so interestingly, probiotics you could take at any time. There can be things like your digestive enzymes at the body, like maybe it would diminish something a little bit, but I deal with this all the time with clients where they're like, we can't have like, when's the perfect time to do something unless we're getting instructions like a medication, which is please take this as the first thing. So do that and be consistent with that. And then maybe like before you have your coffee, a couple hours later or whatever, have your probiotic then. But if it's better for you to take your probiotic in the afternoon, sometimes for people who take it in the evening, it isn't better for them. So I'm careful on that. I have some patients who take it right before bed and we're doing great work and the gut's getting what it needs. So the main thing there is to follow the rules for your medication, unless you get different rules from your specific practitioner.
right?
Yeah.
It's like when you look at the risk reward ratio, it's just better to get them at some point than not get them at all.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So whatever
Sean,
is
don't worry
convenient
about
there.
it. It's just, this is a question I get all the time. I know you were trying to be helpful. Totally. And in the world of helping, like, at the end of the day, the best help you can offer to someone is to say, hey, have a conversation. And if your doctor can't talk to you about your supplements and you're taking supplements, make sure you talk to somebody who can talk to you about your supplements. I will always do that. We are lowest tier. We have group sessions where, in a community thing and whatever, and it's like $30 in a month. It's not even $3 a day. It's like $1 a day. Like there are ways to be able to get better nutrition information about your supplements and to have these conversations. And there are also ways to say to your practitioner, I really would like more specific information. And if you're not the person, who do you want me to collaborate with, on that part? And if that all fails, then just direct them over to me and be like, you got to talk to her and we're fine. Well, I'll catch you in the DMs on that part. Yeah.
I think that we probably should wrap things up because I could be here all night chatting with you. It looks like everyone in the chat wants to chat with us too, but I have one last question for you. It's, just for the audience, because there's some people in the audience that are consumers, right?
Right.
They're not practitioners. So what are just some practical tips maybe for them that you can offer to, help with gut health or improve their gut health?
Totally. Well, I really do invite you, and literally for no reason other than like, I love having people fill out the digestive evaluation.
Yes.
You can do it, and then you can implement one or two of the things I'm about to talk about, and then you can do it again and see if you have improvement. So it's like, it's yours. You can do it however often you want, but measure. Like, don't just think about like, ooh, I think my gut is off, or ooh, I think this, or don't just ignore it. Like that's really important because as we talked about. So one of the things I've not been doing well since we've been on here is, and this is really good, like my stress response is engaged and I'm a go, go, go. And this is me without caffeine. And that is, you've got to breathe. So you really do need to breathe. Your gut really wants you to be able to be that expansion of your gut and taking in that oxygen and like kind of giving that pause. Like that's going to be really helpful for you. The other thing is your gut does better when it's not overwhelmed. So certain things could overwhelm it as ingredients. Certain things could overwhelm it, especially if you don't tolerate it as well or whatever, but just quantity, sheer amount at one time, maybe just more challenging, on that part. And I think the other one, I'm so glad you just said this, like you were reading my mind. Somebody said great information on health where we struggle to find the right doctor for diagnosis. So there's two things. Doctors are great for diagnoses. They're not necessarily great, and I love my doctors. My family are doctors. I will say this to their face. Their job is not to really help you with the implementation. So if you need support on the implementation, which I do and almost everybody I know does, that's going to be the space where you want to actually help them, because just because somebody figures out what might be going on, we don't know what's actually going to be better for you. And so when you're thinking about your gut, please don't try a bunch of different Band-Aids, online tests, buying a poop test here or a supplement there, or, any of these other things, because you're not actually, like, it needs to be a whole system approach where, like, okay, this is the problem, the information I'm trying to figure out. Let me go down the path, figure it out, and make that, and move that piece forward. And my contact information, please feel free to DM me. I literally read my own DMs. That's why I might be a little slow on getting back to them. You can also email me, hello@thebetternutritionprogram.com. You can DM in the Better Nutrition Program if that's helpful on that part. But, in terms of being able to find someone, I think at the end of the day, one of the things that Metagenics has actually done, so I just want to bring it all around, is there's this incredible community. Like, so we all, like, as a community, we all interact. I can't tell you the number of times, like, I am referring somebody over because they come to see me and I was like, you really need this doctor. And, I know this person. And it turns out that I met them at a Metagenics conference, 20 years ago, and I know what they've been doing, in that part. So I think Metagenics can also be a really helpful resource for you. And, it's just about asking for help. Absolutely. Yeah.
And
those are my thoughts.
That's amazing. Another, plug for integration, right? There's not one practitioner that's the end all be all for you. You need a team. And so, just remember that there's always more than one person that you could use to help you in your health quest, for sure.
Yeah.
So Metagenics is actually offering a coupon code for all of you that are on Insta Live tonight. So whether you're a practitioner or a consumer, you can get up to 15% off if you want to try some of the supplements. Like SPM Active is a good one to try. I'm going to pop it in the chat. I'll put it in a few times. But you could just pop over to metagenics.com and purchase, or I don't know if Ashley, if you have a link on your Instagram, they could
I put the link in my profile, so you just have to go to my bio. Like, I know an extra step on that part. If I remember and am skilled enough, when you guys share this, I'll share it, and I'll also put the link in my story on that piece. But you guys, like, anywhere you find me, just reach out and ask, and let's do this together, because I think there's a huge opportunity for for me wasn't available when I was in my 20s, and that was to have conversations like this, to be able to, and especially get more of those guys in the conversation. Sean, thanks for bringing that up. Let's have those chats. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Ashley, this has been amazing. I really, really appreciate you doing this tonight. It was also great to chat with you and just get to know you a lot better. So I think next time I'll have so many things to ask you or just bump off of you, which was really great. So awesome. I really, really appreciate you being here. Again, this is Ashley Koff. You can follow her at Ashley Koff Approved, right? That's your Insta name. But also, like she said, DM her if you have questions. You can reach out to Metagenics as well. I'm going to pop the coupon code in the chat one more time. And on behalf of Metagenics, we really appreciate you being with us tonight. Thank you so much.
Everybody.
We'll talk soon.
Take care.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, great.